All right, well, he was the face, one of them at least, of COVID-19, and now he's set to face a firestorm up on Capitol Hill. Dr. Anthony Fauci will testify tomorrow before Senator Rand Paul's committee about the federal response to the COVID-19 pandemic. The Kentucky Republican teeing up the hearing by releasing more than 1,000 pages of Fauci's private pandemic journals. The entries raise new questions about Fauci's handling of the pandemic in real time. For example, among Fauci's notes, a consistent theme of enjoying his newfound fame. Here's one of them in which he writes, "Big front page article about me appeared in the Washington Post. Very flattering. It's not hyperbole," he goes on to say, "that today I am the most famous and talked about person in the country." Now, the journals also detail Fauci's relationship, which turned rocky with President Trump, including disagreements over mask wearing. He writes at one point, "Do we really need to have those masks on? It sends the wrong signal. I told him that we should keep them on since it would be an unforced error to take them off." That was May of 2020, middle of the month there. He also believed that the virus did not originate from a lab in China. One of the journal's writings, he says, "Now we know the market was not the source, it was the amplifier," meaning that wet market. Having said that, somewhere the virus jumped from animals to humans. That was at the beginning there, at the end of January 2020. Now, agencies, of course, have since written that they believe the lab very well could have been the source. Admiral Brett Giroir was a key figure on the COVID task force and is featured in those journals dozens of times. The doctor, the Admiral, back with us tonight. Doctor, thanks for joining us. Appreciate it.
Great to be with you as always.
Of course. So Fauci up on the Hill tomorrow. What do you want to see out of it?
Well, I'd like to see honesty and transparency, and I'd like Tony to come clean with all the things that he's really been caught in contradictions. And yes, I'm shocked by his unabashed narcissism, worrying about his fame when all of us were worrying about the 1,000 or 2,000 people dying the next day. It's really kind of sickening. But, I don't think we need to be that salacious. I want to get down to the issues. What was the origin of COVID? Did the NIH, which they clearly did, fund gain-of-function research at the Wuhan laboratory? Why was he saying he did not support or did not cause schools to be closed down when in his diary he clearly could claim credit for it? And a little bit personally, I was a little shocked to know that he was conspiring with Jake Tapper before I had a Sunday afternoon.
I'm going to get into that in a second, but there might be some folks here watching this who think that Dr. Fauci did a great job. And hear you say unabashed narcissism. Explain yourself.
Well, his diary, we all know, everybody knows that Tony had a big ego, and that's fine. Great people often have large egos. But to talk about himself on the front page of newspapers and that he's the most famous person in the world and he's more famous than the president, I mean, it's sickening. Why are you even thinking of this? You should just be thinking of public health and what can we do to save lives? What can we do to communicate better with the public? What other stone can I, leave turned over that I can do? So it's a little bit sickening to me to know that it went to that extreme, that while we're worrying about saving lives, he's worried about his international fame and seemingly obsessed with it.
So I think it's fair to say that Dr. Fauci, at least in part, was not a fan of the decisions that you made or some of the comments that you were making, Doctor. For example, here's April 19th, 2020. Had conversation with Jake Tapper, who's asking where the 27 million tests by the end of March came from, Brett Giroir. Fact is, I have no idea how he got that number. Deb Burks has no confidence in Giroir, nor do I. And then a couple months later, at the end of July, Brett Giroir on Tapper, State of the Union, talking bull bleep about testing with Jake pressing him. I gave Jake some questions to ask him. Let's take his diary entries there at face value. Now that you see that that is in there, what say you?
Well, the reason I became testing czar is because Tony did nothing from January 29th to March 13th for testing. When I took over, there was no tests in the stockpile, no swabs, no mechanisms, not even phone list of who to call. So I think he needs to look at himself on that. The fact that he did not know where the numbers came from doesn't bother me because he never asked me nor bothered to find out. We created 41 national testing sites in 4 days from March 13th to March 19th. and develop testing at an unprecedented level. So, the fact that he doesn't know something, that doesn't mean that we don't know it or had it completely controlled, and we did. Sort of an unprecedented surge in testing that, again, I had to become testing czar because of the failure of he and Dr. Birx before that. And that's why I was called in to make a cleanup and turnaround operation, along with Brad Smith and hundreds of dedicated public health professionals.
There might be some folks listening to this and saying, man, that seems like a bunch of dysfunction, and people pointing fingers that way. What would you say to them, doctor? And on this idea of looking backwards, should we still look backwards, or is it time to move forward?
Well, we have to look backwards to move forward. If we don't understand what happened, we'll never be able to move forward. In terms of testing, the country was unprepared for testing. That was very clear, and it lost the month of February due to leadership dysfunction by Dr. Fauci and primarily the FDA over-regulating. So we need to look back to move forward. We also need to understand that this virus probably came from human manipulation in the Wuhan lab, and it probably escaped unintentionally. But if we're going to stop this from ever happening again, we have to understand it, admit it. Dr. Fauci needs to admit it, that it's the most likely possibility, and then we can create safeguards in order for it to not happen again. So yes, we do need to still look back, but look back only in the context of making us better prepared for the future.
Dr. Admiral Brett Giroir with us tonight. If we all remember those days, and you remember the Admiral, right, as part of the coronavirus task force. A lot of this will come to head tomorrow with Dr. Fauci up on the Hill. Admiral, thank you so much.
Thank you for watching. Subscribe below and download our NewsNation app right now on your phone, and you will get fact-based, unbiased news for all Americans.